Homo Deus, the new human agenda, the right to happiness. The second big project on the human agenda will probably be to find the key to happiness. Throughout history, numerous thinkers, prophets, and ordinary people defined happiness rather than life itself as the supreme good. In ancient Greece, the philosopher Epicurus explained that worshipping gods is a waste of time, that there is no existence after death, and that happiness is the sole purpose of life. Most people in ancient times rejected Epicureanism, but today it has become the default view. Skepticism about the afterlife drives humankind to seek not only immortality, but also earthly happiness. For who would like to live forever in eternal misery? For Epicurus, the pursuit of happiness was a personal quest. Modern thinkers, in contrast, tend to see it as a collective project. Without government planning, economic resources, and scientific research, individuals will not get far in their quest for happiness. If your country is torn apart by war, if the economy is in crisis, and if healthcare is non-existent, you are likely to be miserable. At the end of the 18th century, the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham declared that the supreme good is the greatest happiness of the greatest number, and concluded that the sole worthy aim of the state, the market, and the scientific community is to increase global happiness. Politicians should make peace, business people should foster prosperity, and scholars should study nature, not for the greater glory of king, god, or country, but so that you and I could enjoy a happier life. During the 19th and 20th centuries, although many paid lip service to Bentham's vision, governments, corporations, and laboratories focused on more immediate and well-defined aims. Countries measured their success by the size of their territory, the increase in their population, and the growth of their GDP, not by the happiness of their citizens. Industrialized nations such as Germany, France, and Japan established gigantic systems of education, health, and welfare. Yet these systems were aimed to strengthen the nation rather than ensure individual well-being. Schools were founded to produce skillful and obedient citizens who would serve the nation loyally. At 18, youths needed to be not only patriotic but also literate so that they could read the brigadier's order of the day and draw up tomorrow's battle plans. They had to know mathematics in order to calculate the shell's trajectory or crack the enemy's secret code. They needed a reasonable command of electrics, mechanics, and medicine in order to operate wireless sets, drive tanks, and take care of wounded comrades. When they left the army, they were expected to serve the nation as clerks, teachers, and engineers, building a modern economy and paying lots of taxes. The same went for the healthcare system. At the end of the 19th century, countries such as France, Germany, and Japan began providing free healthcare for the masses. They financed vaccinations for infants, balanced diets for children, and physical education for teenagers. They drained festering swamps, exterminated mosquitoes, and built centralized sewage systems. The aim wasn't to make people happy, but to make the nation stronger. The country needed sturdy soldiers and workers, healthy women who would give birth to more soldiers and workers, and bureaucrats who came to the office punctually at 8 a.m. instead of lying sick at home. Even the welfare system was originally planned in the interest of the nation rather than of needy individuals. When Otto von Bismarck pioneered state pensions and social security in late 19th century Germany, his chief aim was to ensure the loyalty of the citizens, rather than to increase their well-being. You fought for your country when you were 18 and paid your taxes when you were 40 because you counted on the state to take care of you when you were 70. In 1776, the founding fathers of the United States established the right to the pursuit of happiness as one of 3 unalienable human rights, alongside the right to life and the right to liberty. It's important to note, however, that the American Declaration of Independence guarantees the right to the pursuit of happiness, not the right to happiness itself. Crucially, Thomas Jefferson did not make the state responsible for its citizens' happiness. Rather, he sought only to limit the power of the state. The idea was to reserve for individuals a private sphere of choice, free from state supervision. If I think I'll be happier marrying John than Mary, living in San Francisco rather than Salt Lake City, and working as a bartender rather than a dairy farmer, then it's my right to pursue happiness my way, and the state shouldn't intervene even if I make the wrong choice. Yet over the last few decades, the tables have turned, and Bentham's vision has been taken far more seriously. People increasingly believe that the immense systems established more than a century ago to strengthen the nation should actually serve the happiness and well-being of individual citizens. We are not here to serve the state. It is here to serve us. The right to the pursuit of happiness, originally envisaged as a restraint on state power, has imperceptibly morphed into the right to happiness, as if human beings have a natural right to be happy, and anything which makes us dissatisfied is a violation of our basic human rights. So the state should do something about it. In the 20th century, per capita GDP was perhaps the supreme yardstick for evaluating national success. From this perspective, Singapore, each of whose citizens produces on average $56,000 worth of goods and services a year, is a more successful country than Costa Rica, whose citizens produce only $14,000 a year. But nowadays, thinkers, politicians, and even economists are calling to supplement or even replace GDP with GDH, gross domestic happiness. After all, what do people want? They don't want to produce, they want to be happy. Production is important because it provides the material basis for happiness, but it is only the means, not the end. In one survey after another, Costa Ricans report far higher levels of life satisfaction than Singaporeans. Would you rather be a highly productive but dissatisfied Singaporean or a less productive but satisfied Costa Rican? This kind of logic might drive humankind to make happiness its second main goal for the 21st century. At first glance, this might seem a relatively easy project. If famine, plague, and war are disappearing, if humankind experiences unprecedented peace and prosperity, and if life expectancy increases dramatically, surely all that will make humans happy, right? Wrong. When Epicurus defined happiness as the supreme good, he warned his disciples that it is hard work to be happy. Material achievements alone will not satisfy us for long. Indeed, the blind pursuit of money, fame, and pleasure will only make us miserable. Epicurus recommended, for example, to eat and drink in moderation and to curb one's sexual appetites. In the long run, a deep friendship will make us more content than a frenzied orgy. Epicurus outlined an entire ethic of do's and don'ts to guide people along the treacherous path to happiness. Epicurus was apparently onto something. Being happy doesn't come easy. Despite our unprecedented achievements in the last few decades, it is far from obvious that contemporary people are significantly more satisfied than their ancestors in bygone years. Indeed, it is an ominous sign that despite higher prosperity, comfort, and security, the rate of suicide in the developed world is also much higher than in traditional societies. In Peru, Haiti, the Philippines, and Ghana, developing countries suffering from poverty and political instability, fewer than 5 people in 100,000 commit suicide each year. In rich and peaceful countries, such as Switzerland, France, Japan, and New Zealand, more than 10 people per 100,000 take their own lives annually. In 1985, South Korea was a relatively poor country, bound by strict traditions and ruled by an authoritarian regime. Today, South Korea is a leading economic power. Its citizens are among the best educated in the world and enjoys a stable and comparatively liberal democratic regime. Yet, whereas in 1985 about 9 South Koreans per 100,000 killed themselves, today the annual rate of suicide is 36 per 100,000. There are, of course, opposite and far more encouraging trends. Thus, the drastic decrease in child mortality has surely brought an increase in human happiness and partially compensated people for the stress of modern life. Still, even if we are somewhat happier than our ancestors, the increase in our well-being is far less than we might have expected. In the Stone Age, the average human had at his or her disposal about 4,000 calories of energy per day. This included not only food, but also the energy invested in preparing tools, clothing, art, and campfires. Today, Americans use on average 228,000 calories of energy per person per day to feed not only their stomachs, but also their cars, computers, refrigerators, and televisions. The average American thus uses 60 times more energy than the average Stone Age hunter-gatherer. Is the average American 60 times happier? We might well be skeptical about such rosy views. And even if we have overcome many of yesterday's miseries, attaining positive happiness may be far more difficult than abolishing downright suffering. It took just a piece of bread to make a starving medieval peasant joyful. How do you bring joy to a bored, overpaid, and overweight engineer? The second half of the 20th century was a golden age for the USA. Victory in the Second World War, followed by an even more decisive victory in the Cold War, turned it into the leading global superpower. Between 1950 and 2000, American GDP grew from 2 trillion to 12 trillion. Real per capita income doubled. The newly invented contraceptive pill made sex freer than ever. Women, gays, African Americans, and other minorities finally got a bigger slice of the American pie. A flood of cheap cars, refrigerators, air conditioners, vacuum cleaners, dishwashers, laundry machines, telephones, televisions, and computers changed daily life almost beyond recognition. Yet studies have shown that American subjective well-being levels in the 1990s remain roughly the same as they were in the 1950s. In Japan, average real income rose by a factor of 5 between 1958 and 1987, in one of the fastest economic booms of history. This avalanche of wealth, coupled with myriad of positive and negative changes in Japanese lifestyles and social relations, had surprisingly little impact on Japanese subjective well-being levels. The Japanese in the 1990s were as satisfied or dissatisfied as they were in the 1950s. It appears that our happiness bangs against some mysterious glass ceiling that does not allow it to grow despite all our unprecedented accomplishments. Even if we provide free food for everybody, cure all diseases, and ensure world peace, it won't necessarily shatter that glass ceiling. Achieving real happiness is not going to be much easier than overcoming old age and death. The glass ceiling of happiness is held in place by two stout pillars, one psychological, the other biological. On the psychological level, happiness depends on expectations rather than objective conditions. We don't become satisfied by leading a peaceful and prosperous existence. Rather, we become satisfied when reality matches our expectations. The bad news is that as conditions improve, expectations balloon. Dramatic improvements in conditions, as humankind has experienced in recent decades, translate into greater expectations rather than greater contentment. If we don't do something about this, our future achievements too might leave us as dissatisfied as ever. On the biological level, both our expectations and our happiness are determined by our biochemistry rather than by our economic, social, or political situation. According to Epicurus, we are happy when we feel pleasant sensations and are free from unpleasant ones. Jeremy Bentham similarly maintained that nature gave dominion over man to two masters, pleasure and pain, and they alone determine everything we do, say, and think. Bentham's successor, John Stuart Mill, explained that happiness is nothing but pleasure and freedom from pain, and that beyond pleasure and pain, there is no good and evil. No good and no evil. Anyone who tries to deduce good and evil from something else, such as the Word of God or the national interest, is fooling you, and perhaps fooling himself too. In the days of Epicurus, such talk was blasphemous. In the days of Bentham and Mill, it was radical subversion. But in the early 21st century, this is scientific orthodoxy. According to the life sciences, happiness and suffering are nothing but different balances of bodily sensations. We never react to events in the outside world, but only to sensations in our own bodies. Nobody suffers because she lost her job, because she got divorced, or because the government went to war. The only thing that makes people miserable is unpleasant sensations in their own bodies. Losing one's job can certainly trigger depression, but depression itself is a kind of unpleasant bodily sensation. 1,000 things may make us angry, but anger is never an abstraction. It is always felt as a sensation of heat and tension in the body, which is what makes anger so infuriating. Not for nothing do we say that we burn with anger. Conversely, science says that nobody is ever made happy by getting a promotion, winning the lottery, or even finding true love. People are made happy by one thing and one thing only: pleasant sensations in their bodies. Imagine that you are Mario Götze, the attacking midfielder of the German football team in the 2014 World Cup final against Argentina. 113 minutes have already elapsed without a goal being scored. Only 7 minutes remain before the dreaded penalty shootout. Some 75,000 excited fans fill the Maracanã Stadium in Rio, with countless millions anxiously watching all over the world. You're a few yards from the Argentinian goal when Andre Schürrle sends a magnificent pass in your direction. You stop the ball with your chest. It drops down toward your leg. You give it a kick in midair and you see it fly past the Argentinian goalkeeper and bury itself deep in the net. Go! The stadium erupts like a volcano. Tens of thousands of people roar like mad. Your teammates are racing to hug and kiss you. Millions of people back home in Berlin and Munich collapse in tears before the television screen. You are ecstatic, but not because of the ball in the Argentinian net or the celebrations going on in crammed Bavarian beer gardens. You're actually reacting to the storm of sensations within you. Chills run up and down your spine. Waves of electricity wash over your body, and it feels as if you're dissolving into millions of exploding energy balls. You don't have to score the winning goal in the World Cup final to feel such sensations. If you receive an unexpected promotion at work and start jumping for joy, you are reacting to the same kind of sensations. The deeper parts of your mind know nothing about football or about jobs. They know only sensations. If you get a promotion, but for some reason don't feel any pleasant sensations, you will not feel satisfied. The opposite is also true. If you have just been fired or lost a decisive football match, but you are experiencing very pleasant sensations, perhaps because you popped some pill, you might still feel on top of the world. The bad news is that pleasant sensations quickly subside and sooner or later turn into unpleasant ones. Even scoring the winning goal in the World Cup final doesn't guarantee lifelong bliss. In fact, it might all be downhill from there. Similarly, if last year I received an unexpected promotion at work, I might still be occupying that new position, but the very pleasant sensations I experienced on hearing the news disappeared within hours. If I want to feel those wonderful sensations again, I must get another promotion and another. If I don't get a promotion, I might end up far more bitter and angry than if I'd remained a humble pawn. This is all the fault of evolution. For countless generations, our biochemical system adapted to increasing our chances of survival and reproduction, not our happiness. The biochemical system rewards actions conducive to survival and reproduction with pleasant sensations. But these are only an ephemeral sales gimmick. We struggle to get food and mates in order to avoid unpleasant sensations of hunger and to enjoy pleasant tastes and blissful orgasms. But nice tastes and blissful orgasms don't last very long. If we want to feel them again, we have to go out looking for more food and mates. What might have happened if a rare mutation had created a squirrel who, after eating a single nut, enjoys an everlasting sensation of bliss? What might have happened if a rare mutation had created a squirrel who, after eating a single nut, enjoys an everlasting sensation of bliss? Technically, this could actually be done by rewiring the squirrel's brain. Who knows? Perhaps it really happened to some lucky squirrel millions of years ago. But if so, that squirrel enjoyed an extremely happy and extremely short life, and that was the end of the rare mutation. For the blissful squirrel would not have bothered to look for more nuts, let alone mates. The rival squirrels, who felt hungry again 5 minutes after eating a nut, had much better chances of surviving and passing their genes to the next generation, for exactly the same reason. The nuts we humans seek to gather, lucrative jobs, big houses, good-looking partners, seldom satisfy us for long. Some say that this is not so bad, because it isn't the goal that makes us happy, it's the journey. Climbing Mount Everest is more satisfying than standing at the top. Flirting and foreplay are more exciting than having an orgasm, and conducting groundbreaking lab experiments is more interesting than receiving praise and prizes. This hardly changes the picture. It just indicates that evolution controls us with a broad range of pleasures. Sometimes it seduces us with sensations of bliss and tranquility, while on other occasions it goads us forward with thrilling sensations of elation and excitement. When an animal is looking for something that increases its chances of survival and reproduction, for example, food, partners, or social status, the brain produces sensations of alertness and excitement, which drive the animal to make even greater efforts because they are so very agreeable. In a famous experiment, scientists connected electrodes to the brains of several rats, enabling the animals to create sensations of excitement simply by pressing a pedal. When the rats were given a choice between tasty food and pressing the pedal, they preferred the pedal, much like kids preferring to play video games rather than come down to dinner. The rats pressed the pedal again and again until they collapsed from hunger and exhaustion. Humans, too, may prefer the excitement of the race to resting on the laurels of success. What makes the race so attractive is the exhilarating sensations that go along with it. Nobody would have wanted to climb mountains, play video games, or go on blind dates if such activities were accompanied solely by unpleasant sensations of stress, despair, or boredom. Alas, the exciting sensations of the race are as transient as the blissful sensations of the victory. The Don Juan enjoying the thrill of a one night stand, the businessman enjoying biting his fingernails watching the Dow Jones rise and fall, and the gamer enjoying killing monsters on the computer screen will find no satisfaction in remembering yesterday's adventures. Like the rats pressing the pedal again and again, the Don Juans, business tycoons, and gamers need a new kick every day. Worse still, here too expectations adapt to conditions, and yesterday's challenges all too quickly become today's tedium. Perhaps the key to happiness is neither the race nor the gold medal, but rather combining the right doses of excitement and tranquility. But most of us tend to jump all the way from stress to boredom and back, remaining as discontented with one as with the other. If science is right, and our happiness is determined by our biochemical system, then the only way to ensure lasting contentment is by rigging this system. Forget economic growth, social reforms, and political revolutions. In order to raise global happiness levels, we need to manipulate human biochemistry. And this is exactly what we've been doing over the last few decades. 50 years ago, psychiatric drugs carried a severe stigma. Today, that stigma has been broken. For better or worse, a growing percentage of the population is taking psychiatric medicines on a regular basis, not only to cure debilitating mental illness, but also to face more mundane depressions and the occasional blues. For example, increasing numbers of school children take stimulants such as Ritalin. In 2011, 3.5 million American children were taking medications for ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. In the UK, the number rose from 92,000 in 1997 to 786,000 in 2012. The original aim had been to treat attention disorders, but today completely healthy kids take such medications to improve their performance and live up to the growing expectations of teachers and parents. Many object to this development and argue that the problem lies with the education system rather than with the children. If pupils suffer from attention disorders, stress, and low grades, perhaps you ought to blame outdated teaching methods, overcrowded classrooms, and an unnaturally fast tempo of life. Maybe we should modify the schools rather than the kids. It is interesting to see how the arguments have evolved. People have been quarreling about education methods for thousands of years. Whether in ancient China or Victorian Britain, everybody had his or her pet method and vehemently opposed all alternatives. Yet hitherto, everybody still agreed on one thing. In order to improve education, we need to change the schools. Today, for the first time in history, at least some people think it would be far more efficient to change the pupils' biochemistry. Armies are heading the same way. 12% of American soldiers in Iraq and 17% of American soldiers in Afghanistan took either sleeping pills or antidepressants to help them deal with the pressure and distress of war. Fear, depression, and trauma are not caused by shells, booby traps, or car bombs. They're caused by hormones, neurotransmitters, and neural networks. Two soldiers may find themselves shoulder to shoulder in the same ambush. One will freeze in terror, lose his wits, and suffer from nightmares for years after the event. The other will charge forward courageously and win a medal. The difference is in the soldier's biochemistry. And if we find ways to control it, we will at one stroke produce both happier soldiers and more efficient armies. The biochemical pursuit of happiness is also the number one cause of crime in the world. In 2009, half of the inmates in U.S. federal prisons got there because of drugs. 38% of Italian prisoners were convicted of drug-related offenses. 55% of inmates in the UK reported that they committed their crimes in connection with either consuming or trading drugs. A 2001 report found that 62% of Australian convicts were under the influence of drugs when committing the crime for which they were incarcerated. People drink alcohol to forget. They smoke pot to feel peaceful. They take cocaine and methamphetamines to be sharp and confident. Whereas ecstasy provides ecstatic sensations and LSD sends you to meet Lucy in the sky with diamonds. What some people hope to get by studying, working, or raising a family, others try to obtain far more easily through the right dosage of molecules. This is an existential threat to the social and economic order, which is why countries wage a stubborn, bloody, and hopeless war on biochemical crime. The state hopes to regulate the biochemical pursuit of happiness, separating bad manipulations from good ones. The principle is clear. Biochemical manipulations that strengthen political stability, social order, and economic growth are allowed and even encouraged. Those that calm hyperactive kids in school or drive anxious soldiers forward into battle. Manipulations that threaten stability and growth are banned. But each year, new drugs are born in the research labs of universities, pharmaceutical companies, and criminal organizations, and the needs of the state and the market also keep changing. As the biochemical pursuit of happiness accelerates, so it will reshape politics, society, and economics. It will become ever harder to bring it under control, and drugs are just the beginning. In research labs, experts are already working on more sophisticated ways of manipulating human biochemistry, such as sending direct electrical stimuli to appropriate spots in the brain, or genetically engineering the blueprints of our bodies. No matter the exact method, gaining happiness through biological manipulation won't be easy, for it requires altering the fundamental patterns of life. But then, it wasn't easy to overcome famine, plague, and war either. It is far from certain that humankind should invest so much effort in the biochemical pursuit of happiness. Some would argue that happiness simply isn't important enough, and that it is misguided to regard individual satisfaction as the highest aim of human society. Others may agree that happiness is indeed the supreme good, yet would take issue with the biological definition of happiness as the experience of pleasant sensations. Some 2,300 years ago, Epicurus warned his disciples that immoderate pursuit of pleasure is likely to make them miserable rather than happy. A couple centuries earlier, Buddha had made an even more radical claim, teaching that the pursuit of pleasant sensations is in fact the very root of suffering. Such sensations are just ephemeral and meaningless vibrations. Even when we experience them, we don't react to them with contentment, rather, we just crave more. Hence, no matter how many blissful or exciting sensations I may experience, they will never satisfy me. If I identify happiness with fleeting, pleasant sensations and crave to experience more and more of them, I have no choice but to pursue them constantly. When I finally get them, they quickly disappear, and because the mere memory of past pleasures will not satisfy me, I'll have to start all over again. Even if I continue this pursuit for decades, it will never bring me any lasting achievement. On the contrary, the more I crave these pleasant sensations, the more stressed and dissatisfied I will become. To attain real happiness, humans need to slow down the pursuit of pleasure. Slow down the pursuit of pleasant sensations, not accelerate it. This Buddhist view of happiness has a lot in common with the biochemical view. Both agree that pleasant sensations disappear as fast as they arise, and that as long as people crave pleasant sensations without actually experiencing them, they remain dissatisfied. However, this problem has two very different solutions. The biochemical solution is to develop products and treatments that will provide humans with an unending stream of pleasant sensations, so we will never be without them. The Buddha's suggestion was to reduce our craving for pleasant sensations and not allow them to control our lives. According to Buddha, we can train our minds to observe carefully how all sensations constantly arise and pass. When the mind learns to see our sensations for what they are, ephemeral and meaningless vibrations, we lose interest in pursuing them. For what is the point of running after something that disappears as fast as it arises? At present, humankind has far greater interest in the biochemical solution. No matter what monks in their Himalayan caves or philosophers in their ivory towers say, for the capitalist juggernaut, happiness is pleasure, period. With each passing year, our tolerance for unpleasant sensations decreases and our craving for pleasant sensations increases. Both scientific research and economic activity are geared to that end, each year producing better painkillers, new ice cream flavors, more comfortable mattresses, and more addictive games for our smartphones, so that we will not suffer a single boring moment while waiting for the bus. All this is hardly enough, of course, since Homo sapiens was not adapted by evolution to experience constant pleasure. If that is what humankind nevertheless wants, ice cream and smartphone games will not do. It will be necessary to change our biochemistry and re-engineer our bodies and minds. So we are working on that. You may debate whether it is good or bad, but it seems that the second great project of the 21st century to ensure global happiness will involve re-engineering Homo sapiens so that it can enjoy everlasting pleasure. Homo Deus.